Hello friends, and welcome back to the studio. This week's video is going to be a little different because we're not talking about camera gear. Instead, I'm going to take you behind the scenes and show you how I edit GoPro vlogs. This particular vlog is one episode from a 3-week road trip that we did earlier this summer, and I'm going to show you how I use Final Cut Pro to edit the video. Because it's a pretty long video, I have timestamps here and also in the video description below if you want to jump ahead to any of the points. So to start with, here are some frequently asked questions. Number one, what kind of camera did we use? We actually used 3 different cameras. We used a GoPro Hero 8, as well as a Fujifilm X-T3 and a Fujifilm X-H1. The Fujifilms were used to take photos and also some B-roll clips that we used in the vlog, but the main portion of the vlog was filmed with this GoPro. So this is the GoPro Hero 8, and it's in the GoPro Hero 8 Media mod, and we also used the Saramonic external microphone. I'll also flash our exact GoPro settings here up on the screen. Next, what kind of computer am I editing on? So if I'm on the road and traveling, then I'm using my 2015 MacBook Pro, which is still going strong and is still pretty good for editing 4K video footage. However, if I'm here in the studio, then I'm probably using Martin's iMac because it has a 5K Retina screen and it's just a lot more powerful, so it's a lot faster at rendering and editing that 4K video footage. We shoot and edit almost all of our videos in 4K, which means that we need a pretty fast performing machine. So that's why we tend to use a computer or a PC to edit our videos, and I almost never edit those videos on my phone. Although if you guys want to see how to edit a video on the phone, then comment below and perhaps I'll do a follow-up video on that subject. Final question, which video editing software am I using? I use Final Cut Pro, and the main reason is it's a one-time flat fee, unlike Adobe Premiere's annual or monthly fee, and it gives you all the tools you need to quickly and efficiently edit a video. There's also another editing program called DaVinci Resolve, and that's actually Martin's video editing software of choice. And we like that one because, again, it's a one-time fee if you want the professional version, but there's also a free version which gives you a lot of really good tools. Alright, let's dive into editing this vlog. To start with, I offload all of my GoPro footage onto a hard drive. I work off of an SSD hard drive because it's faster and more efficient, but I also back everything up on a secondary hard drive and also keep the original files on my SD card until I'm totally done editing the video. So the very first thing I do is go into my working hard drive, my SSD, and I look for my files that are from the Fujifilm. And because I'm using the X-T3, which doesn't have IBIS or really good stability, I take all of those B-roll files that were shot with Fujifilm and I run them through a program called Mercalli. This gives a little bit of extra stability to my footage, and it does take a little bit of time. So I usually do this the day before I plan to edit my videos. Next, I open up Final Cut Pro and I start a new library as well as a new project, and both of those are labeled the title of my video episode. Next, I go in and I select all of my GoPro footage and I pull that into Final Cut. I select all the GoPro footage and I right-click, go to Transcode Media, and ask Final Cut to create proxy media of all of my GoPro footage. Anyway, the whole point of making proxy media is that it creates a file that is a little bit more low resolution but is easier to edit in than your original video files. The only catch is that it takes a long time to make that proxy media, and in this case I think we have close to 40-50 minutes worth of GoPro 4K footage, so that's going to take a long time. So usually I start this process of stabilizing footage in Mercalli and also making my proxy media in Final Cut the day before I plan to do all of my video editing. So after Final Cut is done making my proxy media, I then go in and I start to do some audio editing to my clips. I add the compressor effect and also the limiter effect. And these are the settings that I have for the audio. So I don't remember exactly how I arrived at these audio settings because I'm hardly an audio professional, but I did as much research as I could. But my basic understanding is that the compressor and the limiter work together to raise the audio settings without having the audio peak, which is essentially what you want for really any video. But anyway, if you have ideas or feedback about what kind of audio settings I should be doing instead, then definitely let me know. So after I apply the audio settings to one clip, I copy and paste them to the rest of the GoPro clips. Also, in case you're wondering, because of the way that we film with GoPro and the way that we make our vlogs, we like everything to be chronological, and that makes my life a lot easier because I don't have to worry about what order each clip goes in. So it's really easy for me to just drag and drop the clips based on the time that we film them in, because the clips are already in order. So after the audio effects are applied, I go through for my first cut of the video. Now, because this footage was filmed almost 6 months ago, and that's pretty typical for us actually, of like, we don't edit our travel videos as we make them. There's always a long period of time between filming and editing, so I usually have to watch the video at least once through to remember what we even filmed and what the story is. So as I'm going through that first cut, I go through and I cut out the parts that are obviously bad. So any audio that just is unusable, or any, in between cuts that we're obviously not going to keep, I go through and pull all of those pieces out. Another really useful tool that I've only recently started using in Final Cut, but it's been so helpful for this first round of editing, is a note-taking tool, and I get to it by pressing the M key on my keyboard. I'm using a Mac computer, by the way. When I do that, I can add a note or a task to that pinpoint on the timeline. And this is super helpful for when I'm like, oh, I know that I have some B-roll footage, so I want to be able to pull that footage in at this moment as I'm talking about it. Or, oh, I want to add in a map. I can use that note-taking tool to help me when I'm going back for my second cut of editing. And all of my notes or my to-do lists show up in the index section on the left-hand side of my timeline. And if I click on any one of those tasks, then the timeline automatically goes to that section where I made the mark. For my first round of editing, I don't usually add a lot of transitions, but one transition that I will add is when I make a cut in the audio. If you hear that little pop there,
everything looks like Mad Max. So the drive from...
I can actually eliminate that by using a custom transition that I made. It's pretty basic, but for some reason you have to make this as a customized transition, but it's like an audio crossfade. So when you use a transition like this, and let me know in the comments if you want me to show you how I made this transition, because it involves using a separate program, but all it does is smooth out your audio between the cuts so that you don't get that weird pop.
It looks like Mad Max. So the drive from...
So that pretty much summarizes how I approach the first round of cutting. I'm mainly using the blade tool, which you can get to by pressing the B key on your Apple keyboard. And the whole point is just to take out all of the obviously bad or flawed parts that we're not going to keep, and also to make sure that the parts that I do keep are telling a story. Our approach to vlogging is also pretty freeform, so we approach each day or each episode of our travel vlogs without much of an agenda. We don't really know what's going to happen. So as a result, we often end up filming way more than we end up using. So as we edit, it can often be really tricky just to be like, did we vlog enough to tell a story, and what is that story, and how can I very quickly convey it to the audience? But that's my whole mindset as I'm approaching editing and cutting down my GoPro footage. In particular, a lot of our audio did get messed up just because our original microphone plan fell through pretty early in this trip, so we had to resort to the ceramic microphone, which we unfortunately did not have a windscreen for. And this day in particular, we were in Arches National Park, and it was really windy. So we actually have a lot of chunks of footage where the wind just blew out our audio.
Really lucky it's so cloudy, and I like the wind as well.
It actually feels good. You can actually do things. And when it comes to vlogging, your audio is like the holy grail. You have to get your audio right. So I'm not going to keep faulty, really bad audio in the vlogs. So for me, that was a pretty big deciding factor for this episode, and pretty much every episode we edited, to take out all of those parts where the audio was very obviously flawed. There were a few times where it was pretty flawed, but I pretty much had to keep the section just because it really helped with the narrative. So you have to make that judgment call sometimes. But that is one of the reasons why it's really important to invest in a good microphone and make sure that your audio is on point when you're vlogging. So after my first round of edits, I took my original footage from a total of about 40 minutes down to 20 minutes, which is pretty good. For our travel vlogs, I aim to keep them at 30 minutes or less, but ideally they should be around 20, which which is sounding about right. But my guess is that this video will end up being under 20 minutes after the second round of editing. So after the first round of editing, I have a pretty good sense of what the story is about, and also some points where I'm going to have to substitute the audio. I'm sure that most of you have some pretty strong opinions about whether you should be using music in vlogs or not. I really like to use music in my vlogs just because I find that it's a really nice way to add another layer of the experience and really just set a mood and a vibe that you can't always do as you're filming. You know, filming, you can have somewhat control of the audio, but you can't really take it to the next level without using something like music to really strike some emotional chords. I also use music to patch over some areas where the audio maybe is non-existent, it's just a bunch of noise, or if the audio didn't work out, but I still want to use that video clip as a transition into the next scene. It's also really helpful for showing photo slideshows because otherwise you might just have, dead silence, which is never a good thing to have either. In case you don't know, there's a very specific way that you have to approach using music in your YouTube videos. It becomes really important if you ever get to a point of monetizing your channel. You have to use royalty-free music, otherwise you run the risk of the original copyright holder of your music getting the actual ad revenue for your videos, which is never a nice thing. So if you're just getting started with YouTube, and even if monetizing your channel isn't the goal or you're not thinking about it yet, it's still better to get off to the right foot and start by using royalty-free music whenever you're going to use music in your videos. There are a few sites out there that offer some really good music, but we use Epidemic Sound just because I really like their library of music. I think it covers a wide variety of genres and also some world music for when we travel. I also really like the whole process of finding music because you can search based on genre, but also feelings and emotions, and that's really important for, again, how I like to use music in my videos. So as an example, here's how I went about finding the music for the second part of our video, which needed music, which is when we first got to Arches National Park, and we got to this part of the park called Park Avenue. And the whole inspiration behind the name of this section of the park is that the structure of the rocks resemble the skyscrapers of New York. So I took that inspiration and decided to use like a New York sort of vibe to the music. So to find my music, I went into Epidemic Sound and just searched for the keyword New York and started listening to some songs. I don't usually listen to more than a few seconds of each song because I feel like you can pretty quickly get an idea of what the vibe is, but it is a really good idea to go from the beginning to maybe the middle part of the song to see if the pace of the music changes. And for me, my idea of New York was trying to use something kind of classic and sophisticated. And on that note, I like to use music in general that is pretty timeless. I don't like to go based on trendy music because I think that just dates your videos. I'd rather, use classical music or even jazz or something that's going to hold up really well over time than using some, EDM, whatever is trendy in the moment kind of music for each video. So the first track I initially chose, I really liked it because it kind of gave you this like exciting feeling of being in New York, and it kind of had this retro feel to it, kind of like being in a casino. And so I really liked it. But when I tried to use that music with my B-roll, I just felt like it was moving a little bit too fast. So I ended up switching out that first song from my second choice, which was a little bit more slower paced, and it's actually called Park Avenue Stroll, so it really fit the theme extremely well. And it just was a little bit slower, but still had a New York kind of city vibe to it, which is what I was going for this particular part of the vlog.
So I guess this is the New York of Utah.
So after I add the music track, I just go through and see how it sits with my B-roll. And whenever possible, I try to time the transition between one scene to another to fall on the beat of the music. It's not always possible, but it just, flows really nicely when that can happen. For the cinematic B-roll, I also like to use the cross dissolve to make that transition from one scene to another a little bit more smooth and seamless. Oh, and another thing I might do for B-roll is slow down the footage a little bit. So we actually shoot our videos in 4K 30 frames per second. A lot of folks tend to shoot in 4K 24 frames per second, and we end up exporting our videos in 4K 24, but I like shooting in 4K 30 because having a few extra frames per second means you can slow down your footage a little bit more, usually down to like 80%. And that can just be really nice for slowing down your pans or your B-roll, and it just looks a lot nicer. And that's something that's best done if you're shooting at a higher frame rate, like 4K 30 or 4K 60. Another possible edit that I might do after I add music is dip down the audio whenever someone is speaking. So sometimes you want to have the music be like the main thing that you're hearing, then you want to have a narrator interject, and then go back to having the music be the main part of the audio.
Utah is the most crazy place.
It really is. That's pretty cool. It's like a giant dinosaur. So cool. And it is 7:25. And look, we almost have the whole place to ourselves. So whenever that happens, I just tap on the R key on my keyboard, and then I can drag and select part of the song that I want to dip the audio down. And then I can drag these little keyframes here to smooth out the transitions and even move them around if I choose to, change where the audio is going to be.
Utah is the most crazy place.
It really is. That's pretty cool. It's like a giant dinosaur. So after my second round of edits, you can see that this timeline looks pretty different. You can see that I've added quite a bit of music and I've done a lot of audio editing, and I've also trimmed down the final video to be about, just under 13 minutes. So down from 40 originally to 20 and then down to 13. So now for my third round of edits, I'm going to go through and start adding in my B-roll, or the Fujifilm footage after it's been stabilized through Mercalli. I also like to go through and add in any still images that can supplement the B-roll. The B-roll usually goes in those parts where I'm already planning to have a musical montage. I also use B-roll as a cover-up in certain parts of the vlog in case I have a whole clip that really works in the vlog, but I might have a moment where something's awkward and I just want to hide it, or illustrate something that I'm talking about. That's another place where I'll use B-roll. So after my third pass through this video, I go through for a fourth pass. And this time I'll watch the whole video, but then I'll also go through and I'll color grade each clip. Now this might be pretty controversial. I'm sure some people like to do the color grading first or in a different order, but for me it just fits my workflow to do color grading last. And the main reason is I don't want to color grade every single clip of my video when I'm most likely not going to use, even half of it. Again, we went from 40 minutes initially down to 13 minutes total. So that's a lot of clips that didn't make the final cut. Also, because we don't shoot flat in either our Fujifilm cameras or the GoPro, we actually don't need to color grade the video clips. We can use the default color, but usually there's at least some, exposure or some contrast that I like to add, or maybe even, adjusting some warmth or upping the saturation a little bit. So usually those are the only kind of color grading edits that I do to the clips. And I do that at the very end. It's like my last step. So the very last thing I do is add a closing part of the video. And I only do this on this particular set of episodes for this road trip, just because this is a multi-episode road trip. So I like to have, on the next episode and like a little preview of what's coming next. But I wouldn't normally do that on every single vlog. It just depends on, what type of total video this is. Along those lines, we also add a little intro to the very beginning of this video, just because it is one episode in a larger series. So after I watch my video in entirety, at least 4, maybe 5 times total in Final Cut, now I'm ready to export. So the first thing I do is go up to View and just make sure that I'm looking at my optimized media and not my proxy media. Because you don't want to export your proxy, you want to export the highest quality video that you have. So there's actually 2 ways to export your videos from Final Cut. You can either export through Compressor or you can share directly. So Compressor is actually a separate program that you have to buy on its own. And I was using it for a long time. I thought there was some benefit to it, but honestly, I feel like it actually takes a lot longer to export through Compressor rather than just share my master file directly from Final Cut. So lately I've been sharing directly through Final Cut, but sometimes I'll go through and do Compressor instead. But either way, it does take some time for that video to render and export. So usually I'll give it, maybe half hour, maybe an hour, depending on how long my total video is. After the video is exported, I watch it again just to make sure that everything exported properly. And then it's ready to upload to YouTube. If you guys want to see the final version of this video and how it came out, then please check out our second channel, Gemini Discover. That's where we upload all of our travel vlogs. Pretty much every single video that's on that channel has been shot with a GoPro of some sort. So if you'd like to see how we use the GoPro vlogs and what the final vlog product looks like, then please check out that channel. If you guys have any questions, then let me know in the comments. Again, this is my personal approach to editing videos and GoPro vlogs. It's definitely not the most professional or most efficient way of doing things, but it's a system that works for me. Martin even has his own method of editing, and he uses an entirely different software. So if you guys want to hear about his approach to video editing, then let us know in the comments below, and I'll try to convince him to do one of these videos himself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.